What's up, everyone? Riley here, and welcome back to the latest segment of Overkill Reviews, BangerTV's weekly heavy metal review show. If you haven't already, make sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and check out that dang Patreon. This week, we're going to be talking about a band that brings the cosmic galaxies right to your front step: aliens, space-time, and the continuum. They're heavy on the soul-crushing death metal, but they also have a good load of beat, boot, ambient stylings within their discography. This is Blood Incantation and their third full-length release, Absolute Elsewhere, out October 4th, 2024, via Century Media Records. Hailing from Denver, Colorado, and forming in 2011, they put out their first full-length album in 2016 titled Starspawn. Their second full-length record came out in 2019. It was Hidden History of the Human Race, and it was that one that everybody and their uncle went absolutely insane for. They've also had 2 EPs since the time frame within their formation. They had a split record with Spectral Voice in 2015, and there's some demos in there as well. Our lineup currently stands with Isaac on drums. You may also know him from bands like Wayfarer and Stormkeep. We have Paul as our guitarist and vocalist. We have Jeff as our bassist. And we have Morris as our other fellow guitarist. And they all dabble in the world of synthesizer when best seen fit. Blood Incantation seems like this otherworldly phenomenon. Even aside from the constant intergalactic theming, they're always doing something outlandishly different, reaching for the stars, if you will, and experimenting within their sound. And they nail it every time. Even though they're doing odd shit, they somehow just seem to still be Blood Incantation. And do you know how many bands manage to pull off being a bit freaky without sounding like a sloppy, disjointed mess? Not many, my friend. So when they dropped Starspawn, it was filthy. It was like gore guts on a comet to Mars. It was loud, it was aggressive, and it was deep. And then they put out Hidden History of the Human Race, and it was like Starspawn, except it was better. The overall quality was boosted. It was cosmic brutality, but it had a bit more of dipping into that proggy death metal, and they started bringing in those strange synths, the laser sounds, which ended up being a new mega factor to what Blood Incantation was going to be. Those incorporations of just peculiarities within their freakish kind of technical arrangements were absolutely everywhere in that album from front to back. And then they put out Time Wave Zero in 2022, and it was a whole other universe that was opened up to us of just ambience and vastness. This one harked for me more to the past than it did into the future, with a very big hat tip to synthesizer experimentations within the 1970s. So now we're at Absolute Elsewhere, and yet again we are greeted with another development. The album opens up with Stargate, and it is considered side 1 of the record, and it comes in parts tablets 1, 2, and 3. It's immediately a grandiose technical death metal introduction. The vocals are sick, the riffs are heavy, and then 2 minutes in, we break into this lengthy and profound instrumental chunk that is very Pink Floyd-esque in its extensiveness, soloing, and synth play. So that first taste of time hopping backwards ends up being the incorporation that they've chosen for the remainder of this album. And by the time we're onto Stargate Tablet 2, it's such a Hawkwind or Jade Warrior instrumental song, and the atmosphere and build of tension is such a focal point. I was starting to forget that Blood Incantation was even ever a death metal band because I was just swallowed whole by this noise and general psychedelic properties of it all. It ends up just being a minefield of exploration from front to back. And once we cross over into side 2 of the album, which is titled The Message, and again comes in 3 parts, it's so odd. I can only hear like a Peter Gabriel era of Genesis. At about 2 minutes into The Message Tablet 2, it opens up into the most stunning, jazzy, smooth, and clean vocaled piece. It's so spacious, it's so ambient, it's so expansive and out of this world. The synths paired with the clarity of the clean tones in the guitars bouncing off of each other is just so complimentary and so divine. I haven't heard a modern band captivate the enormity of 70s prog ever, and they absolutely killed it. On September 27th, they released part 1 of this record, and immediately after it came out, I was already hearing murmurs that it didn't sound cohesive, or the differentiation between death metal and old school prog was too much in the mix, and it sounded like 2 different things had been slapped together for marketing purposes, and it was all just kind of all over the place. And I am here to tell you that I completely and utterly disagree with you. There wasn't a single moment on this album where I felt either shocked, like the differentiation between the 2 sounds was either too much of a stretch or unnecessary, or like they were making an attempt that was too drastic, outlandish, or trying to seek attention. And one major thing that I think held the consistency together from front to back was the drums. Regardless of what period we were at within the record, whether we were balls deep in the psychedelic or we were fixated in the death metal, if the part had drums, which some of it doesn't, the drums were foundationally death metal, and they aren't out of place, and they do not change for anybody. For example, on The Message Tablet 3, we have this gorgeous prog piece. It has layered choraled vocals. It's got a friggin' flute in it. It's got all the soulfulness that you could ever need, but those drums are funky hard. And as we progressively build in preparation for the heavier thing to come in this section, the drums absolutely guide you there, build you there, and take you there. And they make sure that that happens every single time throughout the album. And if we're not building, they do the exact same thing when we are releasing. And building off of that, on that same song, it might have I just needed to bring this one up because I loved it so much. It might have my favorite riff break from the whole album at approximately 6 minutes in. There's that one riff that's just kind of black metal in its own right, and the guitars harmonize, and they end up building it with backing of synths, and it just progresses, and it adds and adds and adds, and it's so dynamic. It's so cool. The placement, pristine. I love when I look at a discography and I've followed a band and I see how over each and every release where they took things from the last and they gave it more gas or they cut it away, and you end up feeling like you're along for that ride and you're generally a part of that creative process and seeing the development. We had those levels of super extreme death metal front to back in the beginning. Then we had the additions of a bit of prog, and then we had that synth release, and now we see it all come together into one, and I couldn't comprehend it better if I tried. And to be quite honest, the whole outer space technical thing kind of reminded me of when Revocation put out the outer ones, except Blood Incantation did the whole technical proggy outer space thing 100 times better. Sorry. So when I got the promo from Century Media, within the first sentence, the little descriptor thing that they give you said, 70s prog album if it was played by a death metal band from the 90s in the future. And it really doesn't matter what else I say, because that's exactly what it is. The production's incredible, it's smooth, it's atmospheric, it's fresh. And even though it's so out of this world, I just want them to keep reaching further and further as a band. And it came at the perfect time, because this year, all I've done is listen to bands like King Crimson and Pink Floyd and Rush. So it was like my two favorite things. I had death metal and I had old 70s prog shit out the sickest baby of the whole year. So with that being said, I'm giving this a 5 out of 5 skulls today on Overkill Reviews. Shoutouts! Rochester, New York's Undeath have their third full-length album coming out October 4th via Prosthetic Records. It's called More Insane. Undeath are like new, modern, old school death metal. Did that make any sense? Anyways, they're sick, so definitely make sure to give that one a listen. Finnish melodic death doom project Swallow the Sun have a new album out October 18th via Century Media Records. It's called Shining. It's a cheesier release, but sometimes that's just what you need. And last, but certainly not least, we have Ashen Tomb. This is a 5-piece death metal project hailing from Helsinki, Finland, and they're dropping their first full-length record on October 18th via Everlasting Spew Records. The album is called Ecstatic Death Rain, and it's super solid, so make sure to check that one out as well. Thanks for coming to hang out with me, and I will see you next time. Cheers.